the Thanksgiving. Today we are back at Human Resource Management class. This is the 6th week. We're talking today about Chapter 8, Orientation and Employee Training. And as we just discussed, there are a variety of ways you can manage yourself and others in the class. And by being proactive, this is how you actually get the class grades. There is no traditional class final exam, so you should not be waiting until the last minute. You should be managing yourself in a class proactively. The sooner you present details, the sooner you get the points. There is one big way to get points, 5 points coming up. It must be done before the midterm break. So week 7 is the latest it can be done. It can be this week. You should be sharing the research that you have already started for your term project, your final term project. Some students have started to talk to me about how they've already contacted the library. They've downloaded several reliable research articles. They've got some of the benchmarking practices. They've used that to understand their focus, and they've already contacted companies. That would be ideal. And then talking about how you're going to continue to survey either people or the employers to develop your connections and learn more about your research project would be ideal. So with that said, is there a group of students or a student that is ready to talk this week about the orientation and employee training or help with the class contribution today? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay. So with this information, talking about what's the difference between orientation and training. The definition, we're going to talk about the orientation kit or training manual, the idea of defining what is training, the needs assessment, categories of training objectives. We're going to be talking about those things, rotation, apprenticeship. All of this stuff in some ways also relates to class. As we go through the class, we have had an orientation in the first week. We've had an introduction to the class, similar to what a company does in the general website, and you can download the class outline talking about what we're looking for, the job details, how you need to do your 2 projects plus your participation. And so when we jump into this, what is orientation? Orientation is the introduction of new employees to the company or to the organization, to the work unit and the job. So the orientation for our class is the website access to the class outline and the Excel files, things like that. There's also different levels inside a company, the organizational orientation and the department orientation. So with the overall organizational orientation, that can be done before you actually get into the job details. We're going to be talking about that. And I hope people have gone through the PPT in advance and you've seen this activity that's talking about what is the difference between the introduction, or more specifically the induction, versus the orientation. Oops, where is it here? So as we go through, this is what we should be seeing. And I just want to make sure that we are aware of the 2 main concepts. What is the induction, or some people confuse introduction, versus the orientation. And you see here, it's sometimes used synonymously. The induction here is the introduction with who you are going to be working for. It includes the company overview, the mission, vision, value statements, the history, business management team and the hierarchy, some of the overall policies and the guidelines, all of that information, just like in our class, should be able to be viewed online before the class, before you get into the company. You should be able to understand this before the actual interview. Felix, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to add something before that about training or the introduction of the employees. There's like a quote, I can translate it from German. It's like, what happens if we train our employees and they leave? And there's like, the answer is like, yeah, what happens when we're not training our people and they stay? That's what's the greater damage.
Yes. It sometimes is viewed as damage, as you've identified. Other times it's viewed as marketing. It's the cost of doing business. There's usually always going to be employee turnover, and that definitely slows down a business, but it's the cost of doing business. Same thing with the CEO. Sometimes people must understand that a corporation is a legal entity, just like a human person, but a corporation can live for hundreds of years versus a person usually lives less than 100 years. So as you identify a person and try to make a job advertisement, select them, recruit them, train them, that's all overall part of doing business. It does slow you down. The positive spin, positive good news, is that it can be viewed as marketing. You're helping show people what is your mission, what is your vision, what are the values. And so should all be very positive to promote the company. Yes, thank you for that. Again, overall, the induction, which can be confused with introduction, basically the same thing. It's the introduction of the company. You should be able to get this before you start, but they do make a formal introduction, usually during the initial stages, so that you understand the company culture, for example. But the work details are usually in the orientation, which is a separate phase. That's when you align the job roles and the responsibilities with the work culture. There's several different learning methods. Obviously, you can present and give videos like we do, but you can also give links to online education. There's information sessions, online learning, workplace tours, formal meetings with teams and departments. In Korea, usually they systemize this because there is a high degree of uncertainty avoidance. People formalize this and usually have one mass recruiting, sometimes two mass recruitings, coinciding with the university graduation each year, each semester. So the company will recruit many people, usually once per year in Korea, and train everybody all at the same time. But in other countries, as we've heard from the Samsung executives, usually other advanced companies hire specific people to do specific skills and get specific jobs done, and they hire them as they are needed individually. And those people can get an induction during the initial introduction. They usually are expected to know this before a job interview, but then they were clarified of these missions, visions, values in case anything does change. The history, the management team, all of that is clarified at the beginning. And then when the person has been chosen to start or has been chosen to get a job offer, that person will be given a training manual. And in many countries, in many companies, the applicant is given the training manual and expected to understand what is the job before they actually walk in and see their desk the very first time to start working. But in Korea, it's usually different. In Korea, they would bring you into the company, sometimes for the first couple of weeks or months. In Korea, you are trained on site about how you're going to be doing the job. Make sure we understand the difference. In Korea, the induction and orientation can be completely separate. In other countries, many advanced companies will expect you to understand the introduction before you start and give you a training manual or for orientation. Also, as soon as you're offered a job contract, and then you will be able to start producing results almost from the first day. There's more information. The source of this is here. You can go through this, but I'm going to be skipping back to this concept and ask the class, how do you think you would be effective managing a company workforce in Korea if it is an international company? So, for example, you're working for Coca-Cola. It's a global company, it's an American company, but Coca-Cola in Korea. When would you give the induction and when would you give the orientation to the staff in Korea? Is there something that would make a difference? So we are going to break the class up into small little groups. Make sure you understand this idea of what is the induction, what is the orientation. The reason why we're putting it into a group is, again, international companies usually would expect the employee to learn about this on your own before you actually start your first day of real work. But in Korea, the average Korean employee would walk into a building, a company on the very first day, basically shell-shocked, not knowing what to do. So what do you think is usually required in Coca-Cola or in Applied Materials, high-tech companies? So let's talk about this and what would be the differences here. So we're going to go through the breakout rooms just for a few minutes. Any questions before we start? No? Going once, going twice? The idea of what is the objective of orientation? I've shown you the Excel file. I've shown you the PDF, the Microsoft document file that's shown in the Excel. I just want you guys to start thinking, overall, international companies have a bit of stress in Korea because usually an international company would do things in a systemized way no matter where you are in the world. But do you think you need to change how Coca-Cola operates from the United States when you're operating in Korea? Or do you think Korean staff should be different enough so that you change the orientation so new workers need to get trained after you start working? Or is it the same way as many other countries? Whenever you join Coca-Cola, you're giving a training manual and you're expected to learn how to do this before you start. Again, any last questions before we start? No? All right. We'll only be doing this for about 5 to 10 minutes, a very short time, just to get you guys chatting with each other. And if you do go through this quickly, please realize that you're expected to use the time to start talking about what articles you've started to find and what sort of research you've started to find. And then encourage each other to share that in class because you get the marks. Okay, here we go. So can you guys all hear again? Julian, I see you at the top. Yes, thank you, Marissa Minsu Kim, for commenting. Great. I'd like to hear from each of the groups. There were some groups that I joined, and the employees or the students, the class participants, some people needed extra training. They were provided with training in class, and we had me as the company director offer extra training if you had questions. And then we broke into groups where you were actually supposed to start talking. And I saw in some groups, some people weren't talking at all, and they were confused. They didn't know what to do. So that is the same idea as Coca-Cola. So the idea of, if Coca-Cola obviously is a global company, they work in most countries, when they're training people, usually the people are given a training manual, and then on the first day you're expected to work. However, the popular method in Korea is the company hires you as a blank slate and train you on the job training, and then you go forward afterwards. So I'd like to hear each of the groups. What do you think would be better? What is good and bad about both of those? Somebody in group 4. I don't think I heard too much from group 4. Is there somebody from group 4 that can comment? Julian, were you in group 4?
Group trust.
I don't know the name, the number of the group.
Okay.
However, I was with Juyong Lee, Hyojin John, and Mr. Almuratov. And it was interesting that Mr. Juyong Lee commented that induction information should be actually listed on the main website of the company. And he also suggested that new employees should be aware of them, of those information, even in advance. And from my perspective, I found this being true in most aspects. On the other hand, I shared from my experience that this information might not be actually the whole everything. So maybe in one or two phrases, it's not that much easy for a company to express all their meaning in the society and how they do things in general. So this induction helps new employees to get to understand what's the general idea about the company, how people behave, what are their values, how they solve things in general, not specific, but in general. What's the general overview?
Okay.
On the other hand, yes, sorry, please.
Could we hear from some students, what the students found out with the group? There's a few things I'm looking for. I'm looking for some students or staff, workers, that actually start the ball rolling, that actually from the very beginning, they can start developing results. Some of those students might have been able to discuss details and they can summarize the group concepts. There are other people that are very traditional Korean, and those students or those employees might need special training or repeating the details. So I just want to show the class if some groups have identified people that can start developing work from the very first day, or is your group different and your group needed to repeat details in the class. Felix, Minsu Kim, I think your group was doing well. Can you guys comment? What did you guys do?
So like in our group, we were discussing whether the orientation should be done before the first day or after, like in the case of Coca-Cola, which was the question, right, Professor? And then I mentioned that I think even if before they're giving some kind of guideline orientation before work, the first day, after the first day, it would be also good to like double check in case they fully understood the guidelines, like the responsibilities and everything. But then we were talking about whether it could be like the disadvantage, which would be the waste of time and resource, because it costs a lot of money, like because time it's money for companies. So like doing orientation 2 times, it might be not like cost effective. But then Felix, he mentioned that maybe it might be better to do the orientation again on the beginning, rather than they have making mistakes during the work after they start working on the company. So that's what we were talking about. And I think it really depends on I was thinking that it depends on which area the company it's working, like if it's manufacturing, or if the person is only like a office work, or whether the person is working in a place where they need to work with machinery or some kind of like maps or guidelines. Like, I think it depends, the depth of the orientation will depend on the area of the work of the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So some people that wait must understand that the company is losing money on you. They have made a training manual. They have given you a training manual. And if you don't learn the details, then the company needs to invest twice in you. So what does HR management think about that? What would HR management do? Why should HR management care about that concept? Any comments? That's one thing to think of. I'm not expecting an answer right now. It's just one thing to think of. Let's go to thank you for that, sharing what your group found. What about Muslimbek Rejabev? What was your group? What did you find?
Yes, Professor.
I'm asking to share what your group found.
We didn't started something like searchings because I cannot contact with my group mate.
We're
So
discussing, yes, about what happened inside the break room.
Yeah, I was late.
Ah,
okay. Next, what about Song An Jo? Sung Ah Jo, what was in your group? Nobody there. What about Ang Rawa?
Yes, Professor, I was in their group.
Okay, please feel free to share your details.
No, we have actually like we were just discussing about like induction and orientation, and you just came in, and we were actually talking about the Coca-Cola, right?
Yes.
So for Coca-Cola to expand its business to Korea at the first time, like we have thought that it's very needed for Coca-Cola company to have to train the Korean new Korean employees. Like that's what we have actually discussed.
Okay, so you think it's good for Coca-Cola to train new employees a second time, provide the training manual as soon as they're hired, and put them through a training program after they've been hired.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like two groups are thinking the same thing. Thank you for that. Gunsu Kim, were you in one of those groups or were you in a different group?
I was with the same group with Hyunhak, and we were talking about that.
Okay. Heijin Jun, I just want to hear from one or two other groups. Not here. Agent Han, what about Shokabos? Shokabos, are you here? You're not in class either? Okay. Ju-Young Lee.
Yes. I'm actually with Julian, so I
Okay.
still, oh, yeah.
All right. So nobody is thinking that it's okay for a big multinational company that's successful all over the world to expect new hires to read the training manuals. And I heard from Min Soo Kim, she was saying that that actually means that the company needs to repeat some of the details and maybe waste money to retrain them. So the advantages would be people are very clear about what to do. The disadvantages, can we hear more from everybody? What are some good points and bad points? Obviously, if we give them the training manual in advance and we put them through a training manual after they start, it should be very crystal clear. What is the job? What is expected of each person? And then they can start afterwards. What is a different view? What are some things that you need to think of? Yes, Julian.
From my direct experience in when you are into operations, it's not working by just telling once to people or to your team or by sharing the objective once, because people needs to first to hear the message, to internalize, then to understand, then to start to act on it. So it's just like in sales. You have to send the message at least 5 times for somebody to hear that you want to tell them something. So it's just like with learning. So you need to repeat in order to get the message. So it's the same with the companies as well. They need to send the message multiple times in order to increase the chance that that message would be received. So
okay, so more training would help people understand more. Great. What is another view that HR would consider? What is another view that all of you, if you want to work for an international company, should think about? What about the idea of your employee records? How does it impact your employee records? What was it that the Samsung executives said when Alonzo Guzman and Boni Nam, Linda Lee, when they joined our class, they were talking about overall ideas of Samsung management and what they expect when they interview people. They were talking about how they loved employees that did a bunch of research, and during the interview, they started to provide results that helped the company, or specifically help that person do their job. Those people stand out. Obviously, the people that don't show results at the beginning, that aren't able to contribute during the interview, they are expected to read a training manual. And if they need more time to be trained again, what would that interviewing manager, what would Mr. Guzman or Mr. Nam or Miss Lee, what would they be thinking? How does that reflect your employment records, your chances of employment, promotion? Are you all equal? When you start a job, does the company want you all to be the exact same? Or do they want some people to be leaders? Do they want some people to actually start helping add value immediately? Obviously, the best companies usually are looking for employees that are the best and can start showing results immediately. So while it is easy to wait and get training again, while it is popular in Korea to have a training manual given to you and website access given to you and have extra training for the first week or month. Sometimes several months are used to train you. While that may happen here, I'm hoping to identify to you all that if you can learn that quickly and start showing your boss, showing your manager that you can help you understand it, if you train other people or you start adding results, then you are what they say, the apple of their eye. You stand out above everybody else and you have an easier chance of getting the promotion. You have an easier chance of getting the better relationship with your boss. You have an easier chance of getting access to fast track through the company rather than waiting. So although there are international differences in HR, although there can be training provided in a company, the sooner you try to provide results, usually the better for yourself and the company. So try to not only learn about the company before you're supposed to start work in your first day, but apply that now in our class. I remind everybody that you have a regular class. Most people wait until they graduate. And then after they graduate, they have interviews. After they have an interview, you might be given a job offer. And in Korea, maybe after you have a job interview and you start work, then you get training. There are better ways, faster ways to develop results. For example, use your classwork with the company, interact with the company, learn about them in advance, exactly like Bonnie Nam and Alonso Guzman have said. Those people stand out. Those people rise faster towards the executives. So that's just one aspect of induction and orientation. Let's go on to the next details here. Again, objectives of the company orientation programs. Of course, you reduce new employee stress. You lower the startup costs of integrating the new employee into the organization by having orientation beforehand. And if you give extra training or you make sure your training manual is very clear, you reduce the turnover caused by failure to understand the rules and the culture of the organization. But it's not just a one-way thing. Although we understand you can have training before and you can have training after, we also understand, as Min Soo Kim has identified, you can have both, and there are other alternatives. What is another alternative? Another alternative is the mentoring program, the coaching program. The idea of matching one senior level employee, like a bigger brother or bigger sister, to a new hire. And so although the new hire has a training manual and can learn on their own, if you have an individual system where you are partnered with a senior person, you only need to ask that person questions to get up to speed. And you don't require 20 people or 50 people. Some companies in Korea would hire hundreds of new staff every year. And so hundreds of people could be put into training programs, but slow things down. So an alternative is the mentoring program, or the coaching program. Next, the idea of the orientation program, it reduces the time required to integrate the employee into the job. It helps the employee adjust his or her work for the environment. So we've talked about pre-employment orientation. We talked about how people can learn before they start. We should understand what is it, when it's used, and why. Why is it different in Korea? Why is there no pre-employment orientation very popular in Korea? Any ideas? Hyunakdo or Felix or Min Soo Kim, Marissa, any comments? Why do you think pre-employment orientation is not usually popular in Korea?
Maybe because of the secure the internal data or something like that. So you don't want everybody into your system, so that everybody sees what you're doing there. Maybe for concurrence or something like that. Or maybe for them is maybe also time loss because they train it also if they're coming there.
Okay, Minsu, I see your hand up. You have more comments?
Like I don't know if I'm right, of course, but I was just wondering, like, because the culture is a little bit different. So for example, in the Western world, it's a little bit more individual, like separate each worker, but as in Korea, and it's a little more collective, like we work more as a group. So for example, the orientation, when it's told as a group, people tend to help each other, explain to each other, or it match, like, I think that's what the company like expects better, rather than, because they focus more on a collective work. But in the US, for example, they are more individualist, like personal goal, like people work by themselves in order to achieve a goal. But in Korea, it's a little bit more different. Like, that's what I thought. Of course, I might not be right. It might be wrong, but that's what I was thinking about.
Okay. Yes, as long as you guys are aware that if you are trying to learn about the company in advance, if you are trying to learn what are the job details in advance, so for your first day, you can show attempts at it. Usually in international companies, you stand out. So please note that it is possible to have training before and after. So why is it used here? Because the culture is usually avoiding uncertainty issues, avoiding questions for new people in Korea. Usually people are just doing exactly what the boss says, but they also just say, yes, boss, yes, boss, yes, boss, regardless of whether they know it or not. So by putting them through the training manual, by putting them through an extra training program, after they've started, you may be able to eliminate those problems with the natural culture saying, yes, I understand. Yes, I have no questions. So both ideas are worthwhile for consideration. Thanks. Between human resource departments and some managers, obviously there's the responsibility for initiating the orientation. Whose job is it to initiate it? And if you are a follower, obviously you want your boss to initiate it. But if you require your boss to initiate this, make sure you understand, especially for international companies, that it will be harder for you to fast track into leadership or management. So if you are responsible on your own, that is definitely noticed. Next, new employee immediate manager. If they're responsible for conducting the departmental and the job orientation, that concept could be different. The idea of the HR department training versus the actual manager inside your specific department, those are different aspects too. When you have a HR department, HR is always in charge of overall development of employees. They're in charge of overall communications. They should be helping make sure every department has a training manual and people follow it. And then not only are they followed, each person is tracked for how well they're getting through and advancing the company missions, values, and interests. But the immediate manager, those specified specialists are at a different level. They are focused usually on one specific aspect. And so when you have in Korea, the idea of corporate training for everyone that's hired, or generalized training programs for everyone, that would be through the human resource department. So you're training everything about the company, and you're training just the basics for the first step once you go into your department. But the department boss usually should be looking at step 2, 3, 4. And so make sure you're aware of that concept. When you're talking to the HR, it is at a completely different level than when you're talking with your department boss. Usually the biggest companies in the world have very big HR departments and training programs. Some big companies have full universities, at least they're called universities, inside the company. So any employee, and every employee is able to access and get training as much as they want to satisfy their needs. If somebody wants to do their job just sufficiently, they can do the basic amount. If somebody wants to do their job very well to get promotions or bonuses, then they can get extra training and learn more. So big companies usually have very big resources for training. Next, the idea of organizational orientation versus department and job orientation. Of course, the organizational orientation prevents the topics relevant and interest to all employees, as like we were talking about, and the department manager or the job supervisor, the specific job supervisor, they will be describing topics that are unique or the step 2, 3, 4 to get those jobs done, just specific to that job department. So we reviewed that. Next, overall training manuals are usually created by one person, but for somebody else. And as we've identified, each person can have a different personality or different culture or different learning style. And so if the learning style doesn't match your personal learning style, sometimes you might not be able to understand that training manual. So that idea of a general organizational orientation would be in a general learning format style. And the supplementary package can be tailored for a department, but it can also be tailored to different personnel styles. Some people like to learn by reading. Some people like to learn by seeing examples. Some people like to learn by seeing somebody else do things. And you can have packages tailored depending on those specific types of people or departments you're working with. Yes, Julian. You are on mute. You need to take off your mute.
I just wanted to remind if we want to take to run that quiz again to allow some time before the class ends.
Sure, okay. So we've gone through several. Let's go through a little bit more of the orientation kit. And then before we get into the follow-up, we'll be going through a break period for a few minutes and use the break period to make sure everybody checks what are some of the things that the executives shared last class. What is the poll we're having? So we'll have another 5-minute break and we will be going through the polls. While we have these polls going on, I encourage all of you to place some of your results, your job results, into the Excel file, or share some of your details in a chat with everybody or to the teaching team. So we're going to finish talking about the orientation kit and then we'll do the polls. Again, the supplemental package is written for new employees, but it can be designed for several different types of employees, depending on the department or depending on the type of learner. Each person can have a different learning or communication style. General HR should become a specialist in that and modify these training packages for those. Of course, they're designed to ensure the essential information is given in the required extent in the text. It also eliminates the chance of giving out too much information. Don't forget that some companies will have people coming in for job interviews just to try to get secret information. Maybe they're working for competitors. So if you give them these training manuals soon as you start interviewing them, and if they're from a competitor, that could teach the competitor what you're doing. Next, that idea of orientation length and the time. Brief sessions, usually internationally, it's less than 2 hours and spread over several days. It increases chance of new employees understanding and retaining information. This is from our textbook. It's a little bit dated information. It's based on the traditional idea that people can learn anytime you have a teacher. People can learn anytime you have a textbook in front of you. But research has shown, HR executives and research has shown overall educational experts that people usually just learn in 40 to 45-minute blocks. And any more than 40 or 45-minute blocks, people don't understand as much, or they stop remembering some of the details. So traditionally, the orientation sessions last less than 2 hours, but then you'll have 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Tuesday, 2 hours on Wednesday, for example. So you're taught slowly over several days. Increasingly, this concept of training is done in even shorter blocks, like 45-minute to 1 hour blocks. Understanding that sometimes the contrary view is that to focus highly specialized people on one topic sometimes takes half an hour or an hour just to make them focused, to think at a very deep level. Next, the orientation length and timing. It increases chances of new employees understanding and retaining information presented. The longer you have it, the more you have it, obviously the better they're going to understand and use information. So we are starting to repeat some details here. Same with our class. The idea that students should start to try to train themselves about the class. They should start to read the textbook, go through the PPT in advance and ask questions in class. Those qualities for our class are the same qualities that the executive managers would be looking for in the best new hires. So with that said, let's go back and complete the toll. We have a little bit more time left. Let me just go back and check here. We have the polls started. We're going to go through this for about 5 minutes.
Okay, so just to recall, that poll was made following the contribution from Mr. Boninam and the other guests. So they were sharing some ideas, some information that were from the inside of the big companies and not from the manuals. So I found it quite interesting, and you can find these questions inside, and the ones who were careful listening, it will be easy to reply. Okay, so
Great.
Professor, isn't it the one that we have finished already? Like
some people have finished, some people did not. So if you have already gone through, you can go through again and try to get higher marks, or you can just use this for break time. Yes.
Oh, great.
Gunso Kim, can you make it? Hello?
I can hear you, but I don't hear from Gunsu Kim.
Pardon?
He was host, and I guess the hosts are not able to fill in.
Me?
Yes, is everybody able to access and see this poll? You should all be seeing this poll. You've had it for
Yeah, I'm doing the poll right now.
great, perfect, thank you. I see one person.
I think we've done this in the previous class, didn't we?
Yes.
Most students have. A few students have not been able to finish it.
I also did this. And should I do it again? Once again? No.
A few people got all answers perfect, correct. Most people did not. So if you want to try to get a higher result this time, you're welcome to try to get a higher result.
Right.
I also see every student in this class, make sure your Zoom name shows your real name, otherwise you cannot get points. There's one person that's registered as a Zoom user guest. That student won't be able to get points for participating in the class or in the quiz. Okay, maybe 2 more minutes and then we're finished. So just a few more seconds for our time to either have a break or finish the poll, and then we'll be coming back to the class. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And sharing the results. Everybody should be able to see the results. Julian, you're one of the hosts. Let's see, who else is available? Hyonak Do, can you now see the results of the poll?
Yes, Professor, I can see that.
Great. We have a tie for question number 1. Would you like to guess? What do you think is the answer for parochial? A, B, or C?
I think it's A.
Yes, absolutely. Parochial is how people are born. When they're born, they're taught something and they only know that one way of doing things. That is parochial. Yes. After you get education, B, what is that called? How about Unso Lim? What is B actually called?
I actually got wrong answer.
Okay, can you guess the idea of we know there are more ways that you can do things, but our way is the best. Anybody want to guess what is that called? Going once, twice. That's called B is ethnocentrism. So when you know your way, you think that's better than the other ways, that is ethnocentrism. So the number 1, the answer is A. ATS stands for the applicant training system. So most people got that correct. The idea of what is the most valuable resource of a company? Obviously, that's very clear, the employees. What kind of questions are the hardest to fake during an interview?
If you, one moment. So according to Mr. Boninam comments, he says that the most important capital of the company would be the intellectual company.
The
Because,
intellectual capital, yes, the ideas inside the employees. So
yes.
Yeah, you're right, my mistake. It is definitely the employees, but what he was saying is even inside the employees, sometimes you have bad employees, sometimes you have good employees. And the best, most valuable is the good employees that actually have the intellectual assets, intellectual capital to contribute to the company. Because yes, some employees are bad, right? That kind of relates to what we're talking about. If you can show your value immediately, you are not only one of the employees that is valuable for the company, but you are the best. Yes, you're right. Thank you for clarifying that, Julian. Next, what kind of questions are the hardest to fake? What Bonnie was saying is case study questions, those types of things when you go through and show the interviewer how you think, you show the interviewer how you resolve a problem in front of them, that actually shows what you're thinking, what you're doing. So the idea of work experience, you can lie about it. The idea of personal questions, you can lie about it. But when you do a case study in front of somebody, those show how you think, how you come up with results, and it's kind of hard to fake that. That's what they're talking about. Next, when comparing Apple and Samsung, Apple prefers to hire specifics with specific skills. And what are Samsung's approach? What kind of people are Samsung generally hiring? And Samsung is generally hiring generalists because in Korea, most people require training from the beginning. However, every single one of those executives that were hired immediately at a higher level for a higher pay, they are hired not to be a generalist. They're hired to start providing results immediately. Make sure you understand the difference between low-level staff and higher-level staff versus generalists. Next, what are the Silicon Valley companies looking for when they evaluate future employees? Usually companies like Apple or Google, they are hiring somebody for a specific job with a specific skill set. So you need to know the specific skills. Next, what's the number one reason why employees leave? According to Bonnie, it's usually a communication or a relationship fit with the manager. Make sure you understand each individual person has a personality style, a character style, a different learning style, and a different communication style. There are many different learning styles, many different communication styles, and at least 16 different people styles, personality styles, character styles. Make sure you understand you could be very different than somebody else, and you may need to modify yourself to match with the other people around you. So the number one reason people leave is they don't understand that, and there's problems with the manager, the person you're working with. Why Apple candidates are interviewed by multiple managers, and they're saying that the manager's performance will be influenced by several other people because you work together. Next, when hiring, Apple looks for the best possible candidates in the world. Yes. Number 10, how Apple manages grading the employees in a process with multiple interviews using a scorecard filled by each interviewer. Make sure you understand that at very high levels, sometimes in Korea, they use the old-fashioned traditional method of scorecards, but with increasing number of companies, companies are using more and more of number B, 10B. So that automatic training system, that automatic computer software program is usually used for grading employees from the very beginning. And after you get several different interviews, especially at higher levels, that's when the specific scorecards and comments are written down. So if you guys have any questions for that, let me know. I'm going to just use a little bit left of the time to talk about the follow-up. So make sure that we are aware that with the follow-up and evaluation, managers should be checking employees' performance and understanding. The idea of people have different personality styles, cultural styles, characteristic styles, learning styles, and communication styles should be known to anybody at a serious level or at a management level, especially by HR. And so you must make sure that although you've said something and it's clear to you because you are referencing your own learning style and your own communication style. But if somebody else has a different learning style, for example, there's the visual learning style, auditory learning style, reading learning style, or the experience or kinetic learning style, those differences may impact how other people see your training content. So the Human Resource Department, they're responsible for making sure that follow-up is clear, make sure that the employee has understood those details. Usually it's done after a month or so. And with our class, it's the same way. I look forward to hearing from you guys to make sure you guys understand what our class training is, what our class content is, and how you can get results. Please feel free to contact me at any time. Before week 8, everyone is required to show your results. Make sure everybody understands that. And I'm not saying wait until week 7. I'm saying that is the deadline. Do it as soon as possible and do it as often as possible in our class and in a company that you're working with. Next, feedback. The method of evaluating effectiveness of organization's orientation program. Obviously, their feedback is obtained using questionnaires, in-depth interviews, group discussion details. It must be adapted because of the orientation of the company, of the people, of the worker. For example, in Korea, if I ask if you understand, most people will not have any comments. Most people will not have any questions. But I specifically saw in the group activities, when we were in the breakout rooms, some groups didn't understand. And although I asked beforehand if you had questions, they still didn't ask. So please, as discussed with the executives of Samsung and these other teachers, please try to push yourself to start showing results, start talking every class. Say something every class, ask questions every class, share a journal article every class. Eventually, you'll get used to it. Eventually, you'll get good at it. And by the time you're in a work environment, in a corporation, you should be better at it if you're working with an international organization. So all of this stuff has been available. The training has been available. It's online. You can see this stuff through the Google Drive materials. I want you guys to realize that training can always improve. It can always develop. And it's best if you share your details at the same time. Otherwise, it's going to be too general. Some people might have different interests. So the sooner you start sharing articles you find interesting, the sooner you share what aspects of HR you're most interested in, the better. Some people are definitely interested in performance or compensation details. Other people were only focused on the interview details or how to actually get an interview. Very different focus. So the more you share that, the more I can help point out details to you. Those people that are interested in compensation, make sure you contact us so we can make sure you're directly introduced to the Samsung staff that can provide you with an internship. If you remain quiet, you will not have that internship full opportunity. You must speak up. You must be able to start your learning process immediately. So there's several reasons we've already talked about with training. There's several steps to training and the needs assessment. Each person can be different. Each department can be different. We should develop a training manual overall. There's questionnaires which can make sure you have taught the right details. The methods of training, there's on-the-job training, which is popular in Korea. There's also job rotation, which is popular in Korea, but internationally, it is very, very different. Make sure you're aware of those details. Obviously, check the advantages and disadvantages of both. What are some advantages to on-the-job training? Obviously, no special facilities are required. You don't need a new classroom, you don't need a new teacher. Samsung used to hire professional professors to come and teach HR or teach programming or teach management or teach sales to their new staff. That is increasingly being changed with online education or with customized training manuals. So understand those details. The idea of an apprentice or internship programs, those are growing incredibly fast. You can use your class opportunity as an apprentice training program or an internship opportunity. These executives are looking to hire people, but you must show your willingness in order to stand out. And again, virtual classrooms, the idea of learning online. Again, there's online learning. You can watch YouTube videos, but there are classes that have been taught by Harvard, by Yonsei, by Keimyung University. Many universities around the world are teaching classes through YouTube. You can access that, use it for the company, and you can hire professors and hire experts to consult your new hires to give them some training online. That is increasingly important. So we've talked about several things, especially the idea of principles of learning. There's several different types of learning. There's several different types of communication. There's at least 16 different types of personality styles and character styles. Make sure that you're aware that principles vary depending on your types, whether you're looking for job security or financial incentives, recognition, status. There's a variety of different things that motivate different people and the principles of learning. So with that said, we are finished the class for today. I want to wrap up reminding all of you that you are given an opportunity to have on-the-job, in-class training. We will continue to repeat some details, but the sooner you contribute to the class, the sooner you start showing results, the sooner you start showing articles you found for your research to interact with companies, the sooner you get points. The sooner you get points, the sooner you can get a high grade. There is no waiting for a final exam. There is no final exam in this. The final exam was a term paper, is a term paper. It was provided on the very first day, your orientation. You are expected to produce results as soon as you can. Thank you very much. Any other questions from students related to orientation and training related to this topic, or questions for weekly topics, or questions for your research projects, which must be presented before the end of week 7? No? Thank you for at least showing. I can see Min-Soo Kim is active. Every other student in class. It's going to be hard for me to train you if I don't see how you're doing. So make sure you not only show yourself with the online training, but show yourself now. You are a student, and even though you may be used to working inside a brick building, try to get some reliable, trusted research articles, learn something that a specialist would say, and then share that smart information with a company. Develop your relationships with them now. Min-Soo Kim, have you contacted companies yet? Have you found articles? You've definitely found articles. Have you shown any articles to a target company yet?
I'm uploading the say journals every day to the Facebook group, and I haven't planned any interview with the company yet. But if
so, which means you are going to have an interview maybe with Samsung or Hyundai, but you are not offering expertise yet. You're not offering advantages yet. You are not identifying yourself as special yet. You can. Simply by sharing some of those articles with the companies you like in an intelligent way, increases your chance of getting noticed, increases your chance of getting a job a lot. Remember the executives were saying, Jihuan So, do you remember, or Heijin Jun, do you remember that the executives from Samsung, they said that the best people they interview start sharing results of the job in the interview or before the interview. They actually said that most new hires are known before a public interview date is created. What does that mean? Anybody understand? What does it mean? A job hire is decided before the job ad is created. Kyunggon Jung, do you understand what that means? When the top executives say job candidates are known, the new hire is identified before the job advertisement is created. What does that mean?
You mean the candidate have like have the intellectual capital, like how do they find out? Do you mean?
Yes. So the person that is going to hire somebody, they know the candidate they're going to hire before they make the job ad. How?
Oh, is it because of, isn't it the resume?
It's partly because of the resume, but it's what the executives, what Bonnie Nam and what Alonso were saying is that the best people for jobs, they research the company in advance. They contact the company in advance. They develop a connection with that hiring person in advance, and they show something of value. And after you show the value, you show that you can help the company. And then that person realizes, wow, I want to hire that guy. But because HR has a legal responsibility to be fair, they must make a job ad, even though they know I want to hire you. They make a job ad, they put it in the newspaper, they put it on the internet, they allow people to apply, but the hiring manager already knows I'm going to hire you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I understand.
Do your classwork and start contacting these people you want to work with now. Don't wait for a job ad. Most job ads are fake. Most job ads, they already know who they're going to hire. So you have to be connected on your own potential, your own proactively. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Professor. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you very much, Minsu Kim, for being the only student that keeps showing your activity in class. I really appreciate that. I will remember you for a long time. Bye-bye.
Oh, Professor, I
Yes?
just want to tell you about the moment a while ago that I was not able to understand the question. It was because I came quite late. I have high fever right now, so I went to the hospital, so I came there late, and as soon as I joined the Zoom, there was a small meeting that was going on, so I was not able to understand what was going on.
Okay, but do you think Coca-Cola is going to slow down when one employee has a fever? It's terrible. I hope you're healthy, and I definitely want to help you make sure you manage your health. But regardless of anybody's health, to do well in the world, you need to show your results. So you can do that by sharing articles you find. You can share them in Facebook. You should talk about that in class. So you don't have to show up each class. But when you do show up, if you want points, you need to identify ways to get those points. Okay?
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Shakabos Almuratov, I see that you're still here, and I've sent some comments to so far. It looks like you have set up Zoom, but you're not participating. Julian, you can hear us. Any comments for Shakabos? Or you want to just email him? I have sent him a private text. I told him that I suggest he talk to me about class details so he gets points, because we've already recorded that he missed several classes. Even though he signed up for the class and the Zoom is registering he's participating, if he doesn't contribute to the class, he's missing points. So
I will check his phone number. He just left. Okay, so we can stop recording.